The wind screamed across the desolate hill of Weathertop, its jagged stones clawing at the sky like the bones of a forgotten giant. Once this was Amonsul, a proud fortress of the Dunedain, its watchtower blazing with the light of vigilance. Now, in the waning days of the Third Age, it was a ruin cloaked in shadow and dread. The year was 3018, and Middle-earth teetered on the edge of ruin. Frodo Baggins, a hobbit bearing the One Ring, fled through the wilds, hunted by the Nazgul, Sauron's most terrible servants. At their head rode the Witch King of Angmar, a spectre of malice whose very presence choked the air with fear. Gandalf the Grey, astride his steed, Shadowfax galloped toward the hill with the fury of a storm. His cloak billowed behind him, silver hair streaming like a comet's tail. The wizard's heart pounded not with terror, but with a burning resolve. He knew the stakes. The ring, a shard of Sauron's dark soul, could not fall into the Witch King's grasp. Gandalf had faced many foes in his long years, trolls, goblins, even the whispers of Sauron's growing power. But the Witch King was different. His name alone was a curse, his power a blade that cut through hope itself. As Shadowfax's hooves thundered up the rocky path, Gandalf's keen eyes scanned the horizon. The sun hung high, its golden rays a fleeting shield against the Nazgul's might. He reached the summit, the ancient ring of stones encircling him like silent sentinels. There, in the daylight's glare, he sensed them, the Nazgul lurking just beyond sight, their presence a cold weight on his spirit. The Witch King was near, his eyeless gaze boring into the wizard's soul. Gandalf gripped his staff, its gnarled wood pulsing with a faint, defiant light. He was no mere man, but Olorin, a Maya, sent by the Valar to kindle hope. Yet even he felt the shadows chill. The air grew heavy, the wind falling silent as if the world held its breath. Gandalf stood alone, a solitary figure against the gathering dark. He knew the Nazgul feared the sun, their power waning under its gaze. But night was coming, and with it the Witch King's full wrath. The wizard's mind raced. Could he hold them at bay? Could he shield Frodo long enough for the hobbit to escape? The answers lay in the battle to come, a clash that would light the skies and test the limits of his strength. As the sun began its descent, Gandalf steeled himself, his voice a low murmur carried by the wind. Come, Shadow, face the light. As dusk painted the sky in hues of blood and ash, the Nazgul closed in. Their screeches pierced the twilight, a sound that clawed at the mind, sowing dread in even the stoutest hearts. Gandalf stood atop Weathertop, his staff raised its tip, glowing like a star torn from the heavens. The Witch King rode at the fore, his black steed a nightmare given form, its eyes burning with malevolent fire. His cloak billowed like a storm cloud, and though his face was hidden, his presence was a weight that pressed against Gandalf's very soul. The wizard's voice rang out a challenge that echoed across the hill. You shall not pass this night. Light flared from his staff, a radiant beam that forced the Nazgul to recoil. The Witch King, undaunted, raised his sword, its blade wreathed in pale flames. For a moment the two stood locked in a silent duel of wills, the air crackling with unseen power. Then, with a cry that shattered the silence, the wraiths attacked. The night erupted into chaos. Gandalf's staff blazed, hurling bolts of white fire that seared the darkness. The Nazgul countered with waves of shadow, their blades whistling through the air. The Witch King was a whirlwind of malice, his sorcery weaving spells that stung like venom. Lightning split the sky, each strike illuminating the hill in stark relief. From miles away, Frodo and his companions glimpsed the spectacle, a storm of light and shadow that seemed to shake the earth itself. Gandalf fought with the fury of a tempest, his magic a shield against the Nazgul's onslaught. He summoned gusts of wind to scatter their ranks, flames to drive them back. But the Witch King was relentless, his power peaking under the shroud of night. Each spell Gandalf cast was met with a counterstroke, each blow parried by the wraith's dark craft. The battle raged for hours, a grueling dance of endurance. Gandalf's strength waned, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Yet he held his ground. He was the flame that would not flicker, the light that would not fade. As dawn's first rays crept over the horizon, the Nazgul faltered. The Witch King, sensing the shift, let out a final chilling screech before retreating into the shadows. Gandalf, battered but unbroken, seized his chance. He leapt onto Shadowfax and galloped north, his mind racing. The Witch King's power was greater than he had feared, a darkness that threatened to engulf all hope. Yet in that moment, Gandalf knew his task was unchanged: to protect the Ringbearer, to defy the shadow no matter the cost. To understand the terror of the Witch King, one must peer into the mists of his past, a tale woven with ambition, betrayal, and darkness. Long before he was a wraith, he was a king of Númenor, that fabled Isle of Men, blessed by the valor. The Númenorians were no ordinary folk, gifted with strength, wisdom, and lifespans stretching centuries. They built a realm that rivaled the glory of the elves. Their kings, towering in might and intellect, were the pinnacle of mortal achievement. The Witch King in his mortal days was among the greatest of these lords, his name lost to time, but his deeds etched in shadow. When Sauron the Dark Lord forged the rings of power, he sought the mightiest to ensnare. The future Witch King, seduced by promises of immortality, accepted one of the 9 rings. At first it amplified his power. His armies grew unstoppable, his sorcery unmatched. But the ring was a trap. Slowly it consumed his soul, binding him to Sauron's will. His flesh faded, his eyes became voids, and he was reborn as the chief of the Nazgul, a spectre of unrelenting malice. From his stronghold in Angmar, a land of frost and despair, the Witch King waged war against the Dunedain of the north. He toppled the kingdoms of Cardolan and Rudor, his armies, a tide of orcs and dark sorcery. Arnor, the greatest of the northern realms, crumbled under his assaults. For centuries he honed his craft, mastering spells that could shatter stone and minds alike. His blade, wreathed in cursed flames, struck fear into all who faced him. Even the elves of Lindon and Rivendell, ancient and wise, could not fully halt his advance. Yet the Witch King was more than brute force. He was cunning, patient, a strategist who outlived his foes. When Arnor's remnants united with Gondor at the Battle of Fornost, they drove him back. But even in defeat, he laughed, his black steed rearing as he vanished into the night. His power was not in victory alone, but in the terror he sowed a shadow that lingered long after his armies fled. This was the foe Gandalf faced on Weathertop, a being whose very existence was a wound upon the world. No tale of the Witch King is complete without the prophecy that cloaked him in dread. No man shall slay him. These words, spoken by Glorfindel, an elf lord of great wisdom, were both a warning and a curse. After the Battle of Fornost, as Gondor's Prince Éowyn pursued the fleeing Witch King, Glorfindel halted him. "Do not pursue him," he said, his voice heavy with foresight. "Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man shall he fall." The prophecy spread like wildfire, embedding itself in the hearts of men-elves and the Witch King himself. This decree was no mere riddle, it was a shield. The Witch King wielded it as a weapon, his confidence bolstered by the belief that no mortal man could end him. At Minas Ithil, he stormed the city, slaying Gondor's last king, Éowyn, in a duel that sealed his legend. His laughter echoed through the ruins, a chilling reminder of his invincibility. Armies fell before him, their courage crumbling under the weight of his prophecy. To face the Witch King was to face despair itself, for what hope could stand against a foe no man could kill? Yet prophecies are double-edged. The Witch King's faith in his immunity blinded him to other threats. He grew bold, reckless, his arrogance a chink in his armor. In the War of the Ring, he led Sauron's armies with unmatched ferocity, believing himself untouchable. At the siege of Minas Tirith, he strode through the battlefield, his presence a storm of terror. Men fled, horses reared, and even the stoutest warriors faltered. The prophecy had made him a god in his own eyes, a force beyond mortal reach. But fate is a weaver of surprises. The prophecy did not account for those who were not men, a woman, a hobbit, beings overlooked by the Witch King's pride. As he faced Gandalf on Weathertop and later at Minas Tirith, he saw only the wizard's power, not the greater tapestry unfolding. The prophecy that had been his strength would become his downfall, a truth that would unravel on the fields of Pelennor. Are you, gripped by the clash of light and shadow in Middle-earth, want to uncover more secrets of Gandalf the Witch King and the heroes who shaped Tolkien's world? Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We're diving deep into the Lord of the Rings, from epic battles to hidden lore. Don't miss out. Join our fellowship and explore the wonders of Middle-earth with us. Gandalf was no ordinary figure cloaked in grey. He was Olorin, a Maya, an immortal spirit crafted by Iluvatar, the One in the dawn of time. In the halls of the Valar, he served Manwë, Lord of Wisdom, and Varda, Queen of the Stars. His essence was woven into the music of the Ainur, the cosmic symphony that shaped the world. Yet when Sauron's shadow grew in Middle-earth, the Valar chose Olorin to walk among mortals, not as a god, but as a guide. As Gandalf the Grey, his power was veiled, his form that of an old man, weathered but unbowed. His staff was no mere stick, but a conduit of his will, capable of summoning light or fire. His role was not to dominate, but to inspire, to kindle courage in men, elves and dwarves against the rising tide of darkness. He wandered the wilds, pipe in hand, his keen eyes seeing beyond the surface of things. To hobbits, he was a bringer of fireworks. To kings, a counsellor of unmatched insight. On Weathertop, Gandalf faced the Witch King as the Grey, his power limited yet formidable. He was a spark in the night, holding back a flood of shadow. His magic was not the raw might of the Valar, but a precise, measured force, light to banish fear, fire to defy despair. Yet the Witch King's sorcery tested him to his limits. The Wraith's power, amplified by Sauron's will, was a storm that even a Maya struggled to weather. Gandalf's stand was heroic, but it revealed a truth. As the Grey, he was not yet the Witch King's equal. This battle was but one chapter in Gandalf's long journey. His heart, ever tied to the free peoples, burned with hope. He knew the Ringbearer's quest was the key, and his role was to shield it no matter the cost. But Weathertop was a warning, a sign that the shadow was growing, and Gandalf's own path would soon demand a greater sacrifice. Gandalf's tale took a momentous turn in the depths of Moria, where he faced Durin's Bane, a Balrog of Morgoth's ancient wrath. Their battle was a clash of titans, fire against firelight, against shadow. On the bridge of Khazad-dûm, Gandalf stood firm, shattering the bridge to save the Fellowship. But the Balrog's whip dragged him into the abyss. For days they fought from the roots of the mountain to the peak of Ziraxigil. At last, Gandalf slew the beast, but his own life flickered out, his spirit fleeing Middle-earth. In the halls of the Valar, his fate was weighed. The threat of Sauron loomed larger than ever, and Middle-earth needed a champion. The Valar, in their wisdom, sent Olorin back, not as the Grey, but as Gandalf the White. His cloak now shimmered like starlight. His staff blazed with radiant power. He was no longer a wanderer, but a leader. The head of the Istari, tasked with uniting the free peoples against Sauron's dominion. As Gandalf the White, his might was unshackled. He banished Saruman's treachery at Orthanc, his voice alone compelling the fallen wizard to yield. He rallied Rohan's riders at Helm's Deep, his light breaking the siege. His presence was a beacon, his words a fire that ignited hope in the darkest hours. When he rode to Minas Tirith, he was no longer the weary wanderer of Weathertop, but a force to rival the greatest of Sauron's servants. This was the Gandalf who faced the Witch King anew, his power now a match for the Wraith's sorcery. The memory of Weathertop lingered, but Gandalf the White was no longer bound by the limits of the Grey. His light was a challenge to the Witch King's shadow, a promise that hope could endure even the deepest darkness. The stage was set for their final confrontation, a duel that would test the boundaries of their power. The siege of Minas Tirith was a maelstrom of fire and despair. Sauron's armies battered the White City, their catapults hurling flames, their orcs swarming like locusts. At their head rode the Witch King, his black steed trampling the fallen, his blade a harbinger of doom. The gates of the city shattered under his sorcery, the ram groaned, a testament to his dark craft. Men fled before him, their courage dissolving under his eyeless gaze. The prophecy, "No man shall slay him," hung over the battlefield, a curse that sapped all hope. Gandalf the White rode through the chaos, his staff a beacon amidst the smoke. He rallied the defenders, his voice cutting through the din of war. "Stand, men of Gondor. The dawn will come." His light drove back the shadows, bolstering the hearts of those who faltered. Then, at the broken gate, he met the Witch King. The wraith's steed reared its hooves, sparking on the stone. "Old fool," the Witch King hissed, his voice a blade of ice. "This is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it?" Gandalf stood unmoved, his cloak shimmering like moonlight. His staff glowed its light, a challenge to the wraith's darkness. "You cannot enter while I stand," he said, his words steady, unyielding. The air crackled with tension, the two powers locked in a silent duel. The Witch King raised his sword flames, licking its edge, his confidence unshaken. He remembered Weathertop, where he had driven Gandalf to flee. But this was no grey wizard before him. This was the White, a force reborn. Their standoff was a moment frozen in time, a clash of wills that seemed to still the battle around them. In Tolkien's books, this duel is brief, interrupted by the horns of Rohan as the riders charged to Gondor's aid. The Witch King, sensing a new threat, turned from Gandalf, his focus shifting to the battlefield. But in Peter Jackson's films, the encounter is more dramatic. The Witch King shatters Gandalf's staff, a cinematic flourish that never occurred in the text. This moment, though striking, overstates the Wraith's power. In truth, Gandalf the White was the Witch King's equal, his light a match for the shadow. The fields of Pelennor were a cauldron of blood and fire. The Rohirrim, led by King Theoden, charged into the fray, their horns a clarion call of defiance. But the Witch King was a storm of death, his sorcery scattering their ranks. He felled Theoden with a single devastating blow, the king's body crumpling beneath his horse. Despair swept the riders, their hope flickering like a candle in a gale. The Witch King loomed over the fallen king, his laughter a chilling echo across the battlefield. Then a figure stepped forward. Éowyn, shield maiden of Rohan, her eyes blazing with resolve. Beside her stood Merry, a hobbit, small but unyielding. "Be gone, foul Dwimmerlake!" Éowyn cried, her sword gleaming in the dawn. The Witch King laughed, his voice dripping with scorn. "No man can kill me," he sneered, his blade raised to strike. But Éowyn was no man. With a cry she tore off her helm, her hair streaming like gold. "I am no man," she declared, her voice a challenge to fate itself. The duel was swift and brutal. Éowyn met the Witch King's blows, her courage a shield against his terror. Merry, unseen, struck from behind his blade, piercing the wraith's steed. The beast bucked, throwing the Witch King off balance. In that fleeting moment, Éowyn seized her chance. Her sword flashed, shattering the wraith's helm and piercing his unseen form. A scream tore through the air, a sound that shook the hearts of all who heard it. The Witch King, lord of the Nazgul, fell. His reign of terror ended by a woman and a hobbit. This was the prophecy's truth unveiled in a moment of breathtaking courage. Éowyn and Merry, overlooked by the Witch King's arrogance, fulfilled Glorfindel's words. Their victory was more than a death. It was a spark that reignited hope. The tides of Pelennor turned, Sauron's armies faltering as their champion fell. Éowyn's stand became a legend, a testament to the power of those who defy the shadow, no matter how small they seem. The question echoes through the ages: could Gandalf the White have defeated the Witch King? Their first clash on Weathertop, when Gandalf was the Grey, was a desperate stand. The Witch King, bolstered by night, and his Nazgul drove Gandalf to flee, a testament to his fearsome power. The wraith's sorcery, fueled by Sauron's will, was a tide that even a Mire struggled to stem. Yet that was Gandalf the Grey. His strength veiled his role to guide rather than conquer. As Gandalf the White, the scales tipped. His power was unshackled, his light a rival to the Witch King's shadow. At Minas Tirith, their standoff was charged with potential, a duel that never fully unfolded. In Tolkien's books, Gandalf held his ground, unshaken by the wraith's threats. The films, however, add a dramatic twist. The Witch King shatters. Gandalf's staff a moment that suggests the wraith's dominance. This is cinematic fiction, not canon. In truth, Gandalf the White was at least the Witch King's equal, his magic, a counterpoint to the wraith's sorcery. The prophecy, "No man shall slay him," complicates the question. Gandalf as a Mire was no man, his essence beyond mortal limits. His light could have overwhelmed the Witch King's darkness, his staff a weapon to banish the Wraith's form. Yet Gandalf's purpose was not to claim victories, but to inspire them. He hesitated, perhaps sensing the prophecy's deeper truth. Had he fought, he might have triumphed. But at what cost? His role was to unite, to rally, to ensure the Free Peoples stood together. Éowyn's victory, aided by Merry, was the prophecy's perfect resolution. It was a moment of narrative brilliance, a triumph for the overlooked. Gandalf's power was immense. But Tolkien's tale needed Éowyn's courage to shine. The Witch King's fall at her hands was not just a defeat, but a symbol that even the greatest shadows can fall to those who dare to stand. The fall of the Witch King on the fields of Pelennor was a seismic shift in the War of the Ring. His death was not merely the end of a wraith, but the shattering of Sauron's morale. The Nazgul, leaderless, faltered. Sauron's armies, once unstoppable, began to waver. Gandalf, watching from the walls of Minas Tirith, saw the tide turn. His light had held the city, but it was Éowyn's blade and Merry's courage that struck the decisive blow. Their victory was a beacon, a proof that hope could pierce even the deepest darkness. Gandalf's fear of the Witch King was well-founded. As the Grey, he had faced a foe whose power rivaled his own, a shadow that tested his resolve. As the White, he was a match for the Wraith, his light a challenge to the darkness. Yet Tolkien's tale is not one of singular heroes, but of collective defiance. Gandalf's role was to kindle the flame, to guide the Free Peoples to their own victories. Éowyn and Merry, in their moment of triumph, embodied that truth. The Witch King's legacy is one of terror, a shadow that loomed for millennia. But his fall is a testament to the power of courage of those who stand when all seems lost. Gandalf's journey from Weathertop to Minas Tirith was one of sacrifice and hope, a light that never wavered. Together their stories weave a tapestry of defiance, a reminder that even the mightiest shadows can be undone by the smallest sparks. What did you think of Gandalf's clash with the Witch King? Could the White Wizard have slain the Wraith, or was Éowyn's triumph the only path? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love this deep dive into Middle-earth, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more epic tales from the Lord of the Rings. Hit that bell icon to join our fellowship and never miss a story.